Hi there, how you doing? This is Sean from Pipeworks Gym. Okay, so you've read the title of the video. This is a really difficult video for me to make actually, so I'm just going to get right into it. It's about anxiety. So I suffer extremely badly from anxiety, and what I mean by anxiety is like I don't worry about stuff, or any of that kind of thing. What it is, I get this like overwhelming feeling of fear that just like hits me out of the blue, and it's like the scariest thing you've ever experienced. Multiply that by like 10 or 100. This is the kind of thing I experience, and it's what it basically is just adrenaline being released into my system, and it can be triggered by can, well, I'll tell you the story of how I came to sort of suffering from anxiety, but it can be triggered by many things. I'll give myself a wee fright, a load of what do you call it? Adrenaline is released into my system, and then then I'm terrified. Basically. So that's that's what I suffer from. I have good months, I have bad months. So far, at the time of making this video, I've gone a good couple of months actually without it, which is good. But usually when that happens, it means I've got something around the corner. So it's like, yeah, that can happen. And I wouldn't really call them panic attacks is what I get, because it's like I'm not panicking, it's just pure fear just comes over you, and it's like this feeling in your chest, and then it's like you can get it then if you let it get out of control, rushing thoughts, like horrible evil shit, like really horrible stuff. So that's a little bit something that I suffer from. Yeah, so let me just tell you a little bit about how I came to find myself in that situation. Okay, so my history with anxiety is I've definitely felt it like anxiety since I was a child. Now, remembering back to when I was in primary school, and in high school and all that kind of stuff, I remember having anxiety. Like I remember now knowing what it is. I remember having these like episodes or whatever, and I swear I remember like teachers and all that kind of stuff being like, "Oh, he's badly behaved," all that kind of stuff. But in hindsight, I wasn't badly behaved. I was suffering from an anxiety attack or whatever, And but obviously, like we know more now about that kind of thing. It's probably more easily diagnosed and stuff now. But at the time, it was just badly behaviour or whatever. So that's a little bit about what I experienced when I was growing up. And I suppose one thing I had that was quite traumatic was when I was, I can't remember what age, maybe 9 or something, I got electrocuted with like a bulb, like a lamp that had no bulb in it, and I touched the inside of it and got electrocuted, and that basically like made me terrified of everything for like a good few weeks. I was really sensitive, and I was like pure scared all the time. Anyway, then what happened was in 2013, this thing happened basically where I took a pre-workout supplement, a supplement that's completely legal. You can still buy it from Asda, Tesco, GNC if they even exist anymore. Any of these shops you can go in and you can buy it, any of these sport food shops, and it's a pre-workout. Now I won't really mention what name of the pre-workout it was, because it's basically this thing I'm talking about is called was it DMAA? I don't know what that stands for. Some kind of amphetamine, but like I said, it's legal and it's in loads of these pre-workout supplements, And I took, well, first of all, I ordered these supplements, like just regular protein supplement, and maybe a multivitamin from a reputable company online that I've been buying from for years, and they often give you free samples of stuff, and it was one of the free samples that they'd given, and it was one portion in this packet. So thankfully I didn't take the whole packet, but I took half of the packet. So I consumed half of the packet of this pre-workout, 30 minutes before my workout as the directions recommended. And then literally 30 minutes later, what had happened was the reaction my body took was horrendous. My heart rate went up to 135, and my mind just went insane. The thoughts were going a million miles an hour. I was getting absolutely terrified, scared, most scared I've ever been in my life. I've never experienced anything quite as traumatic as this thing I'm telling you about. Now, I stayed in that zone of like pure, absolute terror like of just unreal thoughts and all that kind of stuff. I would say solid for 3 days solid. So like, what is that, 72 hours solid or whatever. Just absolutely non-stop, and it was just constantly getting worse and worse. Then after the 3 day period, my heart rate was still 135 and remained that way for another week. So it was 9 days. My heart rate stayed at 135, and I would even fall asleep. I would fall asleep terrified and heart rate absolutely going, and then I would wake up and my heart rate would still be crazy high. Now, I didn't actually go to the hospital or anything like that because I actually had a hospital appointment for my ankle or my knee or something at the time, and I couldn't even go to that. I couldn't even leave the house. I couldn't do anything. I was trapped, And then basically what happened was after that 9 days, like that thing wore off, these horrible, demented thoughts, they left me alone eventually. So after that 9 day period, I did recover somewhat, I was able to live then. And quite honestly, if it had gone on any longer, I probably would have seeked, euthanasia. I would have had to have been euthanized because you cannot live like that. That's how bad it was. Anyway, so what happened then was a couple of weeks later. Then I started getting panic attacks. Then it'd be like a flavor. It would be like maybe 50% of what I'd experienced, during taking this supplement. I'd only taken it the once, but obviously it lasted 9 days. I kept having like episodes, like flashbacks almost of this traumatic experience. Now, I gave myself anorexia. Basically, I was anorexic for about 6 months after this episode. Now, I wasn't anorexic in the sort of traditional sense of I thought I was overweight or I thought I was fat. I was anorexic because I genuinely had talked myself into believing that the last thing I ate before one of these panic attacks, before one of these, anxiety attacks, I truly convinced myself that is what had caused it. So I'd eat a banana, and then I'd have like one of these attacks, half an hour later, and then I'd be convinced that banana had caused that attack. So I'd no longer eat bananas, and then it would be like, I'd eat cereal, and then because I'd have an attack then, and that was the last thing I ate, I'd blame the cereal. So eventually the number of foods I could eat was getting narrower and narrower and narrower, and also I was scared to take new foods on board in case I had this reaction. And then I started like being scared of like finishing a whole piece of food, as if like if I was to eat the whole food, up until the last bite, somehow in my mind I'd convinced myself that I'd have that last bite that would somehow be worse for me and I'd be more likely to have an attack. So this happened, this was like that for about 6 to 9 months. And during this period, I also couldn't exercise because anything that made my heart rate increase would cause me to have a panic attack. So if I went to the gym and my heart rate would increase, I would just have a panic attack immediately. And when I say panic attack, I mean like my heart rate would start to increase, then it would really rapidly increase, and then it would just start thumping, and then these horrendous thoughts would come into my head where like, I thought at one point I genuinely thought I might be possessed. Like I was just so terrified, just overwhelming feeling of fear. So basically this whole thing probably lasted for about 9 months, from the very beginning. It happened in May 2013. So from May right up till like Christmas of that same year kind of time. Anyway, then what happened was I sought professional help. I went to go to the Sandyford Road Centre in Glasgow and sought CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and it totally fixed me. What happened was the guy just basically explained to me that it's like totally irrational, everything I'm talking about, and he managed to like break down everything I was saying, and I was able to just take a total massive step back and just realise. And I was set on track then. So I'd had 5 or 6 sessions with them, and that was me sorted. Absolutely amazing, and I was good then for weeks, or maybe even months actually after that. And then maybe I think it was last year then, 2015, I had a couple of episodes then where it was like, fear would come back, and for me personally it comes back mostly at night, so I'm good during the morning. but not at night. So then, you know, I had a couple of, you know, nightly episodes where I'd like have this overwhelming feeling of fear. And it's like, what the feeling is like no matter what you do, you're extremely uncomfortable mentally and physically, and you've got this horrible thought in your head you can't get rid of. Your heart's absolutely pounding, and it's slowly or quickly getting worse. That's what this thing is like. So last year, then I went for more CBT, and before I went for CBT, well, yeah, actually, I you know, had to go on a waiting list for this NHS, and that was the worst thing ever. So I ended up having to pay for it as well. So I ended up spending like £500 or £600 on it. You know, I just had to just. In fact, that was actually this year. That was in January this year, because what had happened was, I went to a barbecue and ate like uncooked chicken. And that was enough to scare me and release all this adrenaline, and basically I had an attack then, and then it carried on the next day and the next day and the next day. So from that episode, it cost me about £500 or £600 to like in therapy to then, you know, reset me to get me back to normal. And luckily, once I'd paid for that, like my waiting list had come up and I got it free in the NHS. So I went for another like 5 or 6 sessions with them to really, you know, to knock it on the head, and I was fine after that then. So that's basically my experience, that's my journey that happened. Now, how it still affects me to this day is I no longer eat wheat, for the reason that in wheat there's a fibre called amylopectin A. Now, amylopectin A has been known to affect people with like mental disorders and stuff like that. And it's not recommended for people that suffer from, you know, depression, you know, anxiety, you know, any kind of condition that's similar to that. So that's why I avoid wheat. You know, that's the main reason why I avoid it, because I'm scared in case it causes anxiety. You know, and if you're suffering from, you know, depression or any kind of that stuff, I would recommend you completely come off wheat as well. Yeah, and then also, so since 2013, I've not taken any drugs. You know, no amphetamines, very little alcohol. I take some alcohol because it's like, the longer you stay away from something, like almost the worse it gets. Like, I mean, the greater the barrier gets. So I probably have half a pint of alcohol. I mean, half a pint of Guinness I usually have maybe once a month or so, just so it's like doesn't become a taboo, so it doesn't become a thing. So that's why I have that. And in terms of supplements, so I had no supplements for all this time, right up until about a month ago, where I started taking a protein supplement purely because I'm dieting down for this photo shoot, and I noticed that my protein was very low because my calories were low, and it's difficult to get, you know, protein in when you're keeping your calories so low. So me going on this protein supplement was a huge deal, because I couldn't take any protein supplements previously. I couldn't take any supplements, you know. So that was like a massive step for me. So I'm really happy for myself doing that. Yeah, I still can't take caffeine. The closest thing I can take to caffeine is dark chocolate. It doesn't contain caffeine. It contains a very similar compound called it's theobromine, I think it's called, and it's got some similar properties to caffeine. It's like not as strong, and it's longer lasting, and it's got less of an effect on like your heart rate and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure if you ate enough, you'd maybe, you know, have negative effects. But I have a square of that every morning, and maybe a square later on. And again, it's just so like, I'm not creating that barrier. I don't want to be like, oh, no chocolate. You know, the more things you have on the no list for that particular reason, the worse. That's so, you know, I'm making sure I have alcohol now and again. I'm making sure I'm having chocolate, just so it's not on the definite no. You know, the only thing that's on the definite no is wheat products. But wheat is a load of shite anyway, and it's like, my life has never been as good, and my physique's never been as good as well without the wheat. Yeah, so definitely drop the wheat. But yeah, so that is what's happened to me. Basically, you know, that's what happened. So I had a freak out in 2013, and it turned my life upside down. And then, yeah, I had to seek therapy. And I sometimes have to walk on eggshells in terms of what I eat as well. So, yep, that is my story. So hopefully it wasn't too long or too boring or whatever, but maybe you can take something from that. Alright, thanks guys, bye.